Alright, well you saw the thumbnail and the title of this video, so you probably know what it's going to be about. I'm having Vergil from Devil May Cry versus a bunch of demon and demon-like entities throughout all of fiction. I'll be scaling Vergil up the further the video goes, giving him only what he needs to beat the characters at hand, up until he either hits a character he can't beat, or beats everyone in the gauntlet. But for the start, I'll just talk about some basic stuff that he should just automatically have. Starting out with weapons, he would have Beowulf, which is essentially gauntlets and boots that do a couple things, but the main things they do is they enhance his attacks with light, and they also boost his physical strength and stats by quite a bit. He also has Yamato, the katana that you almost are always going to see him with in any of the games. It can cut through space-time, as well as opening portals and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. It's basically just an OP cool sword. He also has Mirage Edge, which is essentially his soul as a sword. Yeah. Technically, he has a lot more equipment than that he could have access to, but those are the big three things that you're going to see him use. And also, probably the three most effective things. Anything else he would have access to is kind of just like stuff that doesn't do much for him. Obviously, he has a ton of abilities, ranging from demon abilities, which I'm not going to list off every one of them here. I only list off abilities that are like real specific if I need to for a certain matchup. But some basic stuff he has is obviously super strength, super speed, enhanced senses to a degree. He has extreme durability. He has a healing factor. He has almost endless stamina. He doesn't have to really eat or sleep for the most part. He has a lot of, like, those basic abilities. And he should also just generally scale to a lot of the stuff Dante has as well, which would make his hacks pool a lot bigger. And he has two transformations, those being Devil Trigger and Sin Devil Trigger, which is just, like, consider them the Super Saiyan 1 and Super Saiyan 2 of the verse. So with all that out of the way, let's get into his first opponent. We have Judge Holden. Yep. You could probably see where this is going. A member of the so-called evil trilogy, whose only thing they actually have in common is that they're all from books. Not even books from the same time, just books. Yeah, there's not much the quote-unquote judge can do. He can lift an anvil over his head, he can jump over 11 feet with the anvil. He's crushed a man's skull with his bare hand. He has multiple firearms. I guess he has a horse too. Yeah, I'm kind of reaching here. He's really just a pseudo-normal guy in comparison to Vergil here. Even if we take some of the interpretations of what he could be, he's still probably not doing much. Vergil's a guy that at the barest of bare minimums can blitz a guy that's at the barest of bare minimums stated to be at least lightning speed. So when it comes to speed, Vergil could just blitz him. Again, his main sword literally just negates most characters' durability because it cuts space-time. Nothing shows that Holden can survive getting cut in half or decapitated or anything. Bullets wouldn't do anything to Vergil for obvious reasons, because of regen, and also just the fact that he's way too durable for that. The speed would be a problem, the durability negation. All of that, yeah, Vergil would obliterate this guy in like 3 seconds. So Vergil easily takes the first round. Next we have Dracula from the original novel. He has a lot of abilities, from shape-shifting into mist or animals, ability to drain blood. He can turn people into a vampire by giving you his blood. He does have a weakness to sunlight, holy symbols, and a bunch of other stuff like that, but they're not like game-ending weaknesses. Like, he doesn't explode into fire when the sun hits him like a lot of other versions of him do. He also obviously has superhuman stats, speed, durability, physical strength, all of that. And he has some limited magic as well. Some people like to bring up the other two novels, but those novels aren't made by the original author. They're made by one of his descendants, so they're not canon. As much as some people really want them to be, they're not main canon. And even if I did use them here, it wouldn't change the outcome, which should be obvious with him being so low on this little tower that I'm making Vergil fight through. So why does Vergil still beat Dracula here? Speed. At the lowest possible end, he's fast. He's as fast or faster than an early Dante, who is stated like 1,000 times to be at least lightning speed. Lightning speed is a low end, by the way. Dracula has literally nothing that scales that high. Even with his higher AP ends and being able to just generate a storm, there's a plethora of feats in Devil May Cry that just obliterate that, as you'll see later, so it wouldn't matter. And even if Vergil couldn't just outpower him there, his sword again negates durability. And Dracula can be beaten through just physical damage. That's kind of how he's beaten in the original book. Things worse for Dracula, he has no way to kill Vergil. Vergil is basically able to come back from a puddle. As other characters with the same regeneration can just do that. Nothing Dracula has can just completely destroy Vergil, even if he could land a hit. So, yeah, Vergil kind of just obliterates him. Even with Dracula's hacks, the speed gap and durability negation is too much, and that's ignoring higher ends that Vergil has that I'm not even getting into yet. Next we have Muzan and his 12 strongest demons. This is a very similar situation to Dracula, except Muzan would whoop Dracula really bad. Muzan's hacks and speed and stats in general are just above what Dracula would be capable of, with his very casual stuff at least being in those town ranges. But realistically, people can get him anywhere from city to even mountain ranges at a higher end. Well, I'm not going to really go in depth on where I personally scale Muzan. He's definitely above just base town level, I'll put it that way. Regardless, that wouldn't matter here, as his maximum speed, even if you really hype it up to the highest possible level, is never going to hit anywhere past like low, massively faster than light, and it's never really going to pass even FTL plus. There are technically ways to argue him faster than light, to even pretty high into faster than light. I won't really go in depth on if I believe them or not, or if I would normally go with them, but regardless, my point is Vergil's always going to be faster. Because even off just basic multipliers, Dante, in the span of just a couple games, is able to go from potentially lightning speed, again on the low end, to at least over 100 times the speed of light, still on the low end. And Vergil would just easily scale to that, like, multiple times over by current. So, yeah, Vergil would be way too fast for any demon or Muzan to actually land a hit on. And though Muzan does have some pseudo-immortality, as typically you'd require sun breathing or sunlight to permanently kill him. Stuff like Beowulf, which doesn't technically produce sunlight, but is still a light-based weapon, mixed with durability negating attacks, and the sheer speed Vergil's moving at, is probably enough to put him down indefinitely, in my opinion. So, yeah, Vergil would pretty much clear all of them at once. Next, Makima and Sukuna. Makima is kind of interesting because there's two potential win cons that people are probably thinking of. I say potential in quotations because they're not really win cons. First one is her ability to basically just control people she deems inferior. Even if she could do that to Vergil, which is very unlikely, Vergil could still blitz her before she can get it off, or even midway through her trying it. So she's probably not going to do that. And then we have her basically one-shot little ritual ability. Even if she got that off on Vergil by being far away from him at the start of the fight, he can regenerate from it because it still leaves blood in parts of the body just lying there. And Vergil can come back from a puddle, so yeah, he would just come back and find her and kill her. Even if she did it to him like 1,000 times, he would be fine. So, again, due pretty much entirely to speed, she's kind of cooked. And then we have Sukuna. Sukuna's interesting because he has one of the same hacks that Vergil has, that being the ability to basically cut space-time. Difference is, it takes way longer for him to get it off, and he can only use this attack one time, he can only use one slash at a time pretty much, whereas Vergil can just spam the shit out of it. So Vergil's going to out-hacks him with his own trick, which is not going to be fun for Sukuna. And Vergil has the equal, if not far better, regeneration, and is way faster. So, yeah, he's going to just obliterate Sukuna, chop him to pieces like 1,000 times, and then end the fight. So yeah, he would clear both of them too. Next we have Salem from Ruby, and she's by far the most impressive character so far. Yeah, I'm implying that I think Salem could probably 1v1 Sukuna and win. take that how you will. Regardless, yeah, she's got by far and away the biggest arsenal of bullshit to pull from so far. Generally speaking, has the highest speed consistently, and has the least amount of weaknesses and stuff to just one-shot her. Only problem is she's still, even with her higher speed, being anywhere from FTL to FTL plus, depending on how you scale Ruby. Some people can even argue massively faster in light. She's never going to be as consistently MFTL as even a young Dante is in Devil May Cry. So she's still getting blitzed. As for her durability and stuff, she's immune to most things, but she's not really immune to durability negating attacks just being spammed on her like a crazy person. So it's kind of the same situation with Sukuna. She does have some quote-unquote win cons too, mainly stuff that has to do with soul decay and destruction, kind of similar to what other characters will have later on. The big difference being that she's just too slow to really get it off on any version of Vergil. Even if she could, Vergil also has some stuff that can essentially one-shot her. Though she isn't necessarily weak to just any form of light, Beowulf's still something that would, at bare minimum, annoy her. And just the physical boost that it gives Vergil is more than enough to take her down. So, yeah, Vergil would probably beat her in a 1v1 fight fairly easily, even with her being the strongest on the list so far. Next we have Alistair and Vox from Hazbin Hotel. And their scaling pretty much just comes from Alistair being in the same general ballpark as Stolas, so he would scale to essentially at least a country level shockwave at worst. So, you know, pretty impressive. Most of the other characters here, though there are ways to argue them to country, this is by far the most just pretty blatantly there. Some people would scale them to the full planetary yield of the shockwave. You can, but it's not really consistent, like at all. I mean, sure, this is a casual durability showing, but it's not like it's not like casual means that the multiplier is like well over 100,000 or anything. So I can see maybe continental being a thing, but planetary is a little crazy unless you really want to go crazy with it. Regardless, it's the same situation again, pretty much. There's no massively faster and light stuff in this verse, like, at all, besides one argument for the angels. So, yeah, even with their, like, almost immunity to dying without holy weapons, Vergil's still just gonna negate their durability with time-space, just negation. And even if we really highballed how durable they are, Vergil's AP is pretty stupid, because he would just upscale young Dante. I'm saying young because he's young in comparison to the current Dante, who can beat Nightmare, a guy who can destroy an infinite realm. Yeah, Vergil's pretty casually Uni Plus at worst. So he's gonna just destroy them even without a holy weapon. And even with that, Beowulf has light powers that are probably at least somewhat holy. I don't remember if they're based on holy stuff or not, but regardless, they're going to be annoying. So yeah, Vergil will just blitz and obliterate because of the AP gap and the speed gap. And the same is also true for Lucifer and the Sins as well. There is a argument for Lucifer and the Sins scaling pretty high, since the Sins just downscale off him, and he himself will just scale to some of the angel feats. These are very vague, but you can kind of argue anywhere from like star to multi-galaxy levels for the angels off the description of how the universe, quote-unquote, was made. Even with that, there'd still be a massive AP gap there, and I don't personally think they should scale that high unless there's more context given. Also, off that, you could sort of imply there might be massively faster in light travel if the angels were able to travel that far in a set span of time. Again, I think there needs to be more context given, but even with that, Vergil would still be deeper into massively faster in light, as the Dante 100 times the speed of light argument is his lowest end for that speed. On a higher end, it can easily get into multiple thousands of times the speed of light, because it's relying on assuming that Dante's only lightning speed early on, which, if you know anything about the series, he's probably a lot faster than that. So, yeah, even with the high tiers of the verse, Vergil just kind of obliterates them pretty bad. Next we have Nightmare and Eleanor from FNAF. Reason I chose them is because they're both Agony / Dark Remnant creatures, and those are about as close to demons as we really get in the FNAF series. So how do they scale? Well, they're very casually able to make storms. Calcs for Eleanor's storm as Blackbird range all over the place. The highest I've seen it is, I believe, country level. Typically it's more around like mountain to island. Regardless, it's a lot more impressive than Dracula's storm because we have a set size and speed and all that for the storm, and intensity as well. So that's their very casual stuff. Already pretty impressive in comparison to most of the stuff on the list, but it gets much higher if you use the ball pit. I don't usually use the ball pit for FNAF scaling because I feel like it's a huge outlier, and I don't really think that it's consistent. But if you use the ball pit, there's multiple descriptions that basically say it's a universe. Well, not a universe, a multiverse. As the dimensions and quote-unquote illusions in it are pretty consistently just stated to be universes with their own space-times and all that. So if you do buy that, Eleanor would just scale to that, and Nightmare being essentially just weaker Eleanor would also scale to that. So, is that enough to actually beat Dante, and not Dante, Vergil? Not really. Main reason is, even with that level of power, Vergil would just scale to characters that are already confirmed to be higher dimensional, which would put them on that same multiversal level. By higher dimensional, I mean metaphysical, which can mean higher dimensional or non-physical and a bunch of other things, but in the context of what we're talking about, it most likely means higher dimensional, and there's other stuff backing that I'll get into later. So he's already in that same tier of power. When it comes to speed, most of the time Agony creatures cap at around nanosecond reactions, which can be pretty significantly high into FTL+, depending on how much of a reaction you think it is. In Nightmare vs. Gojo, I believe I had Nightmare at 15 times the speed of light or something like that, and Eleanor would be much faster than that. Scaling off the ball pit, you could argue immeasurable speeds, or at least infinite speeds, potentially. Vergil scales to characters who can travel across an infinite realm in finite time. He would be in the same ballpark. And then their whole being non-physical, not abiding by physics. Not only does Vergil have a weapon that kind of bypasses that form of durability because it affects space-time directly, he also has a weapon that's literally just made of his soul. And we know Agony creatures are affected and can interact with souls. So he can just swing a soul sword at them and do damage. The only big problem is that they're technically immune to existence erasure, and the only way to permanently put one down is Remnant. So it's unlikely Vergil could permanently kill one, at least not without some prep time, or at least planning after the fight, but I do think he could beat either in a 1v1 fight, even with their high ends. Especially with other stuff I'll get into later in the video. Though these are the first characters to actually put up a fight, as they do technically have ways to kill Vergil too. It's just I think the stat gap, which will be more clear by the end of the video, is pretty wide. This is ignoring some arguments for FNAF scaling that can get them into even higher dimensions, but that won't matter by the end of this video, as you'll see. So ultimately, yeah, I think Vergil beats them, but I do think he struggles a bit because they're such a weird type of opponent to fight. And I also think he would be able to resist their normal one-shots because he's fought things similar before. Next I have King Piccolo and Piccolo Jr., meaning Piccolo, like the main one from Dragon Ball Z, and what is essentially his dad. The only reason they're here is because I'm going to do something that I normally would never do for Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball original scaling, and I would be scaling it with the Dead Zone. With the Dead Zone, there is unironically arguments to get Dragon Ball anywhere from multiversal to potentially low hyper, but for this, I'm going to go with the lower end of it just being a quote-unquote hyperspace, which will be 4th dimensional. Even with that, and the potential cross-scaling with lower ends of Z's speed, which can get the trillions of times faster in light arguments, Vergil would still be far too fast for both of them combined. Looking back at the list, they should have been lower on the list, because as stupid as it sounds, Five Nights at Freddy's has better higher ends than early Dragon Ball. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Regardless, yeah, Vergil would pretty much just blitz both of them. And by Piccolo Jr., I mean Piccolo Jr., like, as Piccolo Jr. in the original Dragon Ball, not current Piccolo as of Dragon Ball Super, because Orange Piccolo is obviously a completely different animal. In that same ballpark, we have Calamity Ganon, who while sealed and extremely nerfed, was able to pretty casually move the moon. Depending on which version of the time frame you believe in, if you believe it should go off the game's clock or the real time of the event, this is anywhere from large planetary to dwarf star. Pretty impressive. Not that impressive compared to what we just talked about, but the reason Calamity Ganon's so high up here is because he kind of downscales off Demise, who can create hyperspaces. Yeah, this is why he's in the same ballpark as King Piccolo and all of them. So, same issues as before, just he's actually slower. He does have a little bit more hacks than Piccolo and Piccolo Jr. did, and he has a bigger army, and he has generally more stuff backing him actually scaling to hyperspaces than they do, since Dead Zone's not really confirmed canon in any way, shape, or form. It's just the only movie that, to my knowledge, isn't outright confirmed not canon. Just implied to be, I believe. Regardless, yeah, it's the same situation as before. Vergil would do what Link did, but faster. Now to all the other Legend of Zelda characters in this gauntlet. We have Majora, Ocarina of Time Ganondorf, Demise, and Demon King Ganondorf. From a tier of weakest to strongest, Majora is unironically arguably the weakest here. Yeah, he fights a Link that's from after the events of Ocarina of Time, but literally nothing implies he's even on Ganondorf's level or Demise's level, and he gets defeated canonically fairly easily by Fierce Deity Link. So, yeah, not very strong. Even though he has some of the best on-screen feats of any character, with him very casually being at least universal, he doesn't really scale to the other characters as much. Demise would probably be next. It's probably controversial to say, seeing as he's a literal god in comparison to the two very much mortals. But, let's face it, Demise is literally just proto-Ganondorf. Sure, he has the big hyperspace feat, but Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time is stated stronger, and Demise lost to a sword that the Ganondorf from Tears of the Kingdom can shatter as a mummy. Yeah. Now, as for the other two, I can see people debate it either way. In my personal opinion, I think Ocarina of Time Ganondorf is still stronger than Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf, but I do personally think Tears of the Kingdom Ganon is the second strongest Ganon we've ever seen, with the only competition being Twilight Princess. I do think they're pretty close in power, though Ocarina of Time Ganondorf just generally seems to be the stronger of the two with how much he's hyped up, and the fact he actually has the Triforce of Power here. In terms of power, they all just kind of scale to or upscale Demise, who has that hyperspace feat, to varying degrees. There are plenty of characters in Legend of Zelda have universal to arguably low multiversal, but usually just universal arguments. As for speed, the highest end you could probably get is from the goddesses, who have most likely massively faster in light speed. Demise would directly scale to this, and everyone else would upscale it. Link himself has faster in light stuff, and then in Tears of the Kingdom, there's pretty blatant massively faster in light arguments. So off all that, and also their various hexes, do I think they could beat Vergil? No, again, because speed. Even with all four of these guys being basically immortal, durability negation is still durability negation. And Vergil's no stranger to fighting Demon Kings, or at least Demon King-esque characters. So, yeah, he would obliterate all four of them. I do think that they could be annoying to a Vergil that isn't going all out at the start, especially Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf with his Gloom's hacks ability, or Ocarina of Time Ganondorf if he gets a lucky hit in, since he does have the most power here. I still think Vergil's going to win, overall. Next we have Cthulhu. Not true form Cthulhu, physical form Cthulhu. So how powerful is physical form Cthulhu? Well, when actually brought back at his full power, not as a boat victim because they messed the ritual up, he can not only casually destroy stars, but should generally scale to his city, which is pretty heavily, really heavily implied to be a fourth dimensional construct. Just like, a hyperspace. As for speed, it's debatable how fast he is, but he's at least massively faster in light. Some people might argue infinite speed, as he could potentially scale to other avatars that have that level of speed. Even with infinite to maybe or measurable speeds, I'd still have Vergil winning, because again, durability negation, and also how Cthulhu works. Vergil has pretty insane regeneration, whereas Cthulhu not only pretty much lacks that as an avatar, but his blood is what keeps him there, so once he loses that, he just gets sent back to the void. I know someone's going to say, well, can't Cthulhu use his hacks from the void on the real world? Yeah, but he can't use it that effectively, otherwise, he wouldn't need to go to the real world as an avatar to bring the other gods there. They could just do what they want from the void, which it's made extremely apparent they cannot do. So, yeah. Vergil would pretty easily beat Cthulhu in his physical form. Next we have Dabura. Dabura is weird because you can kind of argue he downscales off Buhand, and if you couple that with the hyperspace argument, you can sort of argue that he scales to maybe 5D levels of energy, which is crazy, but if you do buy that, which I wouldn't, he would be stronger than where I have Vergil right now in the video, but weaker than he will be eventually. Regardless, his speed is equal to Vergil, but his hacks are, in my opinion, not quite as good. His spit ability is pretty overpowered, but it's not something that is more broken than something like, I don't know, negating durability completely. So, without revealing too much about what Vergil has coming up, Vergil would win here pretty easily, even with the close stats. This is the closest fight so far, though. The only thing that's came anywhere near this is the Agony creatures, because they're just like hacks incarnate. Next we have Devoth from Doom. And before I even get into scaling, let's point out a couple things. 1. Does Doom have theoretical physics? Yes. Does that mean Doom is infinite dimensional? Absolutely not. There's a trillion verses with theoretical physics. Gurren Lagann is one. Godzilla is another. Does that mean every verse with it is automatically infinite dimensional? Of course not. 2. People like to bring up Hilbert spaces as proof that Doom has infinite dimensions. Hilbert spaces do not automatically have infinite dimensions, nor do they require infinite dimensions. That loses all of its arguments in like 3 seconds. 3. Origin energy is literally called 4D in the game. How are you going to have an infinite dimensional everything if something's literally stated 4D? 5. There is numbered dimensions in-game. 6. When they refer to places as numbered dimensions in certain parts of the game, like Earth, for instance, they are almost always referring to different dimensions, as in universes, as universes are interchangeably called dimensions within the Doom universe, even by the creators of the game. Meaning, no, just because you're in a place called the 7th dimension doesn't mean you're literally in the 7th dimension. It just means you're in the 7th universe in the cosmology. And whatever number we're on now, when they state there is infinite dimensions, if you're paying attention to the statement, the guy literally says he's referring to universes 3 seconds before he says that. So in conclusion, no, Doom does not consistently have infinite dimensions, nor has it ever been stated to in terms of dimensionality. And no, high outer to outer and general arguments for Doom are almost entirely based on outliers. And for one final thing, if you want to write an entire book about how you believe Doom is outerversal or high hyper or whatever the fuck, Devil May Cry has almost the same exact arguments. So if you buy them for Doom, you have to buy them for Devil May Cry, so just don't do it. I've had people try to continuously wank the shit out of Doom repeatedly in my videos. The thing is, you can do the same wank they use for almost any verse in fiction in general. If you do reply with a book about how you think the Doomslayer solos everything in fiction because he's just that cool and he has a chainsaw shield, guys, I'm not going to reply to you and I'm just going to leave your comment there because I've dealt with people like you before and it's annoying. Because you don't know when to stop talking. So, in conclusion, no, I don't think Doom's high hyper outerversal. If you do, good for you. This isn't the video for you. You might want to click off. So how powerful is Doom? Well, it's pretty strong. It's at least 4th dimensional because, Origin Energy's called that on screen. It's more than likely 5th dimensional. And Devoth himself can be argued up to 6th dimensional, if not higher. So, he should beat the 5D Vergil, right? No, because Vergil has a ninth dimensional soul, like everyone in Devil May Cry. And guess what he can use as a sword? His soul. This would also mean the cosmology of Devil May Cry is at least ninth dimensional. And for people about to say, well, you can argue infinite dimensional for Doom, even after I just explained why that doesn't make sense, Devil May Cry has those same arguments, so go ahead, be my guest. Look like a moron in the comments. Your life, not mine. Regardless, yeah, in a consistent scale, Vergil would beat Devoth. Sorry for me having to repeatedly yell that I don't like how some people scale Doom. It has been extremely annoying dealing with people that scale Doom to places I don't scale Doom, because they don't seem to understand the concept of different people having different opinions and try to shove their opinion down your throat endlessly. So with a ninth dimensional Vergil, what can challenge him now? Well, I have one character that might. That is Destoroyah from the Heisei Godzilla series. For anyone unfamiliar with Heisei Godzilla scaling, this might come as a shock, but Heisei Godzilla stuff is pretty absurd. So let's talk about some basic stuff. For starters, base Heisei Godzilla in the first movie is stated 200 times show a Godzilla who can affect stuff on a 4 spatial dimension level. Some people will like to bring up that 4 spatial dimensions shouldn't actually scale to universal because there's already 4 dimensions, those being the 4 basic spatial dimensions and time. Problem is, anything that exists on a 4 spatial dimension level is by default Uni Plus, because that's infinitely greater than a 3 spatial dimension level. Hence the 4D element. So even if you think since it didn't affect an infinite area it wouldn't be universal, that's not how physics works, unfortunately. So yes, it's a Uni Plus thing. Sorry, I guess. Meaning base Heisei Godzilla is already on that level of attack potency. Now, to clear up some major misconception, does this mean he could destroy the universe? No. Why? Because Godzilla's universe isn't 3D. It's 4D, and potentially higher than that because it holds things such as the higher world and supergravity, which are both extra dimensional on top of that 4th dimensional universe. Remember that next time someone tells you that, oh, Godzilla doesn't nuke the universe with every attack, therefore he doesn't scale to universal. Godzilla's universe doesn't have the same cosmos ours does. They're not the same. It's like comparing a brick to a boulder. They're nowhere near the same thing. And they're nowhere near the same durability either. And even if Godzilla could destroy his universe, it's stated outright he can control his AP, and most other kaiju can too, so it's like a Dragon Ball situation. Goku could easily destroy universes pretty blatantly. We see that on screen. But he doesn't, because he can control how his energy affects things around him through basically controlling his ki. Godzilla has the exact same thing. So, yeah, even DC characters have it too. It's very common in fiction. I don't know why Godzilla is the only one that gets, like, whined at about it. Regardless, yeah, base Godzilla's 4D, and then we have ants that are confirmed to be on a dimensional level. When he fights Mecha King Ghidorah draws power from the higher world, which is basically an entire dimensional plane than that of the base universe. Which automatically means that, yeah, it's 5D. So if this 5D Godzilla then takes on Space Godzilla absorbs supergravity, which is even higher dimensional than that. I mean, you could argue 6th dimensional. The reason I say it's higher dimensional than the higher world is because they make it a point to say it's extra dimensional on top of Godzilla more than once. And he's just blatantly showed to be so way stronger than Godzilla. It wouldn't make sense for him to just be more infinite levels into a dimensionality. It would make far more sense for him to be on an entirely new dimensionality, especially since he's using a force that's implied to be the biggest thing in the verse yet. So yeah, Godzilla's probably 6th dimensional by the time he fights Space Godzilla. And then he's able to bypass Space Godzilla's evolution. Why is this important? Because Space Godzilla's evolution, even as a single cell, was enough to adapt to a dimensional level, meaning Godzilla had to adapt to a dimensional level to bypass it. Or 2 dimensional levels, potentially. Meaning, after the Cosmic Amp, base Godzilla is anywhere from 6 to 7D, at least. Well, actually, he's anywhere from 7 to 8D, I mean, at least. And then Burning is stated to be the biggest amp of all time. Meaning, even at a low end, he's at least 8D in Burning, but you can get him as high as over 10D. Though for this, I typically had Burning at 9D. I feel that's the most consistent end for him. You can argue higher or lower, anywhere from basically 8 to 10, I believe, is where I said. But it's weird because Heisei Godzilla is very crazy with the dimensional amps. Regardless, Destoroyah is stronger than this Godzilla. Not by a dimensional level, but he is able to adapt to higher dimensional attacks after this. So do I think Vergil could beat Destoroyah? Since I typically have Destoroyah at 90, and Vergil generally should also scale there, that you can argue he scales higher since the cosmology could potentially upscale souls on a dimensional level, meaning you could unironically argue 10D for Vergil as well. It comes down to a couple things. Mainly, who's going to get the first hit off. When it comes to speed, there is actually ways to argue Vergil as inaccessible speed, but Destoroyah upscaling immeasurable characters to such a stupid degree, you could kind of just nullify that. So, in terms of speed, they should be generally kind of even. The difference is, I see Vergil trying to end the fight a lot quicker than Destoroyah would. So if Vergil gets the first hit off, and is able to get multiple hits off after that, he could potentially beat Destoroyah. The problem is, Destoroyah is just as likely to essentially one-shot Vergil, and Destoroyah is harder to kill than Vergil. So this is one of the first fights where I can honestly see it going either way. Personally, I think Vergil has a decent edge due to how his abilities work. He could just drop Destoroyah in hell and trap him there if everything else doesn't work, because Destoroyah most likely can't just break through dimensions. I mean, it's theoretically possible he could time travel, but we never see him do it. Ultimately, Vergil has win cons, but he's the least likely of the two to kill the other one. But Destoroyah's only win con is killing Vergil, whereas Vergil has win cons that don't involve killing Destoroyah. So in a natural encounter, the only thing Vergil has to watch out for the most part, outside Destoroyah being equal to him, is Destoroyah's evolution. Because Destoroyah could out-adapt Vergil very quickly. And essentially grow stronger than him, as he was able to adapt to the Infinite Heat Ray, which potentially adds dimensional amps as well. Though this is very iffy, at worst it just amps Godzilla's attacks further. So, I think the second time I'm saying this now. Who do I think wins? In a normal encounter between both characters, I think Vergil wins not by killing Destoroyah, but by essentially ring out. He would trap him in a different dimension using his sword. He'd fight him for a little bit, realize this guy is way too much to kill normally, and then trap him. Is the most likely ending. Though, if it was a fight to the death, inevitably it would eventually end with Vergil most likely dying once Destoroyah out-adapts him. But a normal encounter is just going to end with Vergil trapping him after realizing that Destoroyah is a little crazy. Though ultimately they're pretty close, and in a normal encounter it could really go either way. Next we have Mira from Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, and I'm going to be kind of scaling him to the manga of the heroes stuff as well as the games. Generally, the highest I would comfortably put him is around 7D to Infinite 7D, and that's if you really hype up some of the stuff the characters can do. Generally, he's at least Infinite 5D, like at worst. More than likely Infinite 6D, off-scaling to prior antagonist, he just blatantly upscales. But he can potentially get up to 7D to 7D, like, infinitely. Meaning, Vergil smokes him. Now, you can argue him higher than this. There's some statements that, taken very loosely, can potentially mean outer versal, or at least at least high hyperversal. The problem is these statements are all relatively vague. So if you buy them, yeah, sure, maybe Mira one-shots Vergil. But generally speaking, off more consistent ends, Vergil is actually the stronger of the two. The only thing Mira really has on Vergil is that he's potentially faster, but not fast enough to really make a difference. So, unironically, I just said Destoroyah solos a lot of Dragon Ball Hero. Okay, people are going to get mad about that. Whatever. Now we have Vergil's final opponent, the Scarlet King. I'm kind of doing a soft composite of him because there's like a trillion versions of him. Regardless, anyone that knows SCP scaling knows this is going to be insane. And before I even get into it, let me make one thing kind of very clear. OC fallacy doesn't apply to the original Scarlet King, nor most of the interpretations of him after, because SCP is an original work. It's not a fan-made character if it's part of an original work. And even then, OC fallacy is only something taken seriously by the Verse Battle Wiki, who has, like, teenagers that get damaged by wood at, like, high hyper, so I don't want to hear anything. No, Verse Battle Wiki doesn't determine the rule set of verse battles. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, Scarlet King, by default, scales to stuff like constructs that are just specifically stated to at least be over 100 dimensional. Yeah. And then he scales to a cosmology that holds multiverses and universes and layers of those that scale to dimensionalities going up infinitely over and over and over. The things that go beyond dimensionality itself. And then he can literally scale to concepts that are beyond that and eat them. And he scales to things that just transcend this. Just say he's a little more consistently high outer than Devoth is. Yeah, Scarlet King would beat Vergil. The other reason he's here is to show the true, like, highest level that fictional demons can get to, or fictional demon-like entities. There was never really a shot Vergil to beat him. But Vergil did beat pretty much everyone else here. The only one that really is a 50-50 is Destoroyah. And with Destoroyah, I'd probably have to make a longer video on how I see that going. But for everything else here, yeah, Vergil smokes him. So while Vergil can't beat every demon in fiction, he can beat the vast majority of them. Anyway, yeah, that was the video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.